What's up, guys? KS here. Thanks for joining me today as always. When Glock announced the new 43X and 48, I was of course excited, as many were. Okay, not everybody. Let the haters hate. But when I thought about who might be interested in getting the 48, I struggled a bit. It's basically the same footprint as the venerable 19. Many immediately said, just get a 19 if you want that size. Now, I understand and appreciate that logic, but I think the conversation needs to go a bit deeper. I asked people in a sneak peek I released about the guns, and many of you sounded off. Thank you for that, and I heard all of you. Many said that the 48 will be welcome in states that have a 10-round capacity limit, and why carry something heavier if you don't get the extra rounds advantage? Some said that shooters will benefit from the smaller yet still full-length grip, and even more said that they wanted something just a bit lighter with a more standard sight radius. It's funny, I thought the 43X would be the one everyone talked about, but I was wrong. It's the 48. It's in an odd place for sure, but much like the 19X, I think it will be a popular gun that just takes a little time to get settled. Now it's time to see if the 48 is worthy of sitting side by side with its bigger brother, the Glock 19. Let's jump in. All right, let's jump in and take a look at a couple of comparisons real quick. Everybody likes to see the comparisons, where these guys all stack up with each other. I do have a Glock 19 Gen 5 MOS with me right now. And guys, by and large, these guns are really, really close. I mean, in terms of the slide, the length is basically the same. Now, the barrel length is going to be a little bit different. It's actually a little bit longer in the 48. And as far as interchangeability, I don't believe that is the case. You guys will have to sound off. I've not tried, but I don't believe that to be true. And then the grips they're the same. They're the same length. But where things get a little bit different, that 48, of course, is going to be thinner. It's going to be lighter. That grip is going to be a little bit smaller as well. So it all comes down to your priorities. If you like that bigger, fuller grip on the 19, and you can maybe take advantage of 15 rounds or better in the 19, or maybe you're stuck with 10 rounds, or you just want something a little smaller, a little lighter, a little thinner. Either way, both of these guns will absolutely serve. And then one other comparison, I want to bring back the 43X, of course, because people want to see how these guys stack up. And guys, dimensionally, these guys are 100% identical in terms of grip, in terms of width, all of that. Where they become a little different, of course, is going to be your slide length. That 48 is going to be about an inch longer. Now, in terms of weight, the 48 is going to be 25.12 ounces loaded and 20.74 ounces empty. So it is definitely a light little gun. Another thing to consider, of course, is going to be holsters, and I talked a little bit about Harry's holsters. Here's my inside the waistband rig. I've actually been doing outside with this for a couple of days. I do have the outside version from Harry as well. But one really nice thing, good holster makers like Harry, they're going to make holsters that are long enough to accept the 48 and the 43X. So if you decide to get them both, and some people do, you can run with one holster solution for both guns. So that is pretty cool. Again, there's a comparison of the 48 with a couple of great guns out there. I'll be curious to know what you guys say in the comments about that. All right, let's walk around the frame of the 48. Now, I imagine this video won't be as long as the 43X because the frames are identical, but just to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at, of course, we always start with grip texture and all that kind of stuff. You'll notice this grip texture, and I kind of beat up the 43X for this as well. They did not enhance the texture at all. Now, I've heard some reviewers say that that's a good thing because it is certainly soft. It's not going to beat up your hand. It's not going to beat up your clothes or anything like that. But it's the same texture as the old 43 and 42. They had an opportunity to make it a little bit more aggressive, and I really wish they would have. I wish they would have gone with the Gen 4 or Gen 5 texture, or maybe even the RTF texture, although I know that's a little bit more brutal to some people. I get that. But any chance to make it a little bit more palatable from a grip texture standpoint, I think that would have been welcome. So it was a little bit of a miss there. Here's the thing, though. This grip is longer than a standard 43. You're getting basically a full grip on here. There's even a little bit of kind of a lip right there as well to kind of catch your fingers. So in terms of grip, in terms of ergonomic, at least you've got a full grip to grab onto. And I did find that the gun stayed relatively planted while shooting. But again, a little bit more texture would have been welcome, and you definitely won't be able to see this. The camera hates when I do this, as always, but there is a little bit of a recess, a little bit of an internal magwell in there. It just makes magazine insertion a little bit easier. I love when guns do that. Glock's pretty good about doing that, so I definitely expected it to show up here, and it did, of course. And as we move up the frame, several things. Of course, we've got our normal kind of Glock sort of beaver tail and the area that kind of moves up there. It's enough to get your hand up pretty high on the gun, not too big of an issue. Most people would say that they would want a little bit more of an undercut here, and that's what a Dremel is for. There's certainly some room for improvement there. But overall, in terms of grabbing the gun and making it work, I mean, it's a full grip, it's pretty comfortable. And the next most outstanding thing about this, aside from the length, in terms of changes, of course, is going to be the width of the grip. This grip is a little bit wider than your standard 43 or, of course, a 42. So there is more to grab onto in terms of that width. Now, that is there because it's going to be accommodating a 10-round magazine that also is wider than your standard 43. So if you have an old 43 and you pick up one of these magazines, it's not going to work. Sorry, it's not interchangeable, and a lot of people are upset with that. But they made the grip wider on the gun, and so they had to accommodate the magazine with all 10 rounds in here. I mean, it all kind of goes together, and I'm okay that they did that. I know, again, interchangeability is a big deal with Glocks, and they've been known for that for a long time. We'll see a lot of aftermarket things coming at some point in time there, and I'm sure people will get used to it pretty quickly. Now, here's our magazine button, same as it ever was with the Gen 4s and the 43s. It's swappable, but not ambidextrous out of the box. And same goes for your slide lock slide release, not ambidextrous, now not swappable on this one, of course, but it is, again, standard for these types of guns. There's just not enough room to make most of these guns fully ambidextrous in terms of that. And then we've got our takedown lever up here on the frame. I will take this down very briefly, just a quick show and tell on the guts here in just a little bit. We won't spend a lot of time on it. And as you can see, no accessory rail. Now, I find it funny on this one, even though, again, these types of guns, I don't really care one way or the other, I was sort of surprised that they didn't extend the dust cover a little bit. You'll notice there's some of that slide, a little hole there. I'll get to that in a moment. But I actually thought an accessory rail might have actually come on this one. It might have been a little bit too thin, a little too narrow. Maybe your accessories wouldn't fit on it. So you guys will have to be the judge of that. Now, we do have a little bit of grip texture on the front of the trigger guard. If you like to put your finger there, that's not a thing for me, but I know some people do. So there is your frame overall. Again, the big difference is the grip length and the width of it as well. I do think that that is a welcome improvement. I really do. All right, let's take a look at the slide for a moment or two. Of course, the most outstanding thing about this slide in terms of what people have noticed is the color. This color falls somewhere between a silver and a gray, and it's an NPVD coating. And you guys will notice I haven't been bringing in some of the close-up pictures I like to do in my videos of late. That's partly because this slide really didn't look very good in those close-up pictures. It was hard to make something look the way I like it to. So we're just going with the on-camera video for this particular one. But we do have some front serrations. I like that. It breaks up the slide. I'm not really a press checker, but it's there if you want to. And again, I think it's a more custom look. And of course, our rear serrations as well. I mean, I think it's very attractive. It's very similar to the 43X in that regard. Now, I mentioned this hole on the front of the slide on the lower part. It's actually there for a couple of reasons. Primarily, it's there to do sight work, so you can get your tool in there and unscrew the front sight, change it out, that sort of thing. But it does lighten the slide a little bit as well, so it kind of keeps that balance a little bit better. Many Glocks have that, again, primarily for the front sight, so a lot of people were curious about that in the last video, and I had a little bit of a stumble there and trying to think about what that was there for. So many people commented, and I appreciate that. Now, in terms of sights, like I said, I did change this out. I went with some Ameriglows. This did come with the standard polymer sights, which I do not like at all, but I did shoot it with the standard sights for the video, just kind of keep it real as best I could, and I'll be happy to go back to the range and use these. I love the HD call out in front, this little guy right here. These are night sights, and then our blacked out rear with the tritium vials in it as well. So there's your slide, guys. Again, the big thing, that NPVD coating. It'll be interesting to see how well this holds up over time. It's already got a couple of tiny little wear marks from the holster, although not bad. And, a little wear on the slide isn't that big of a deal. But again, there you have it. All right, we'll take down the 48 for just a moment or two. This will not be quite as detailed as the 43X. You do have to pull your trigger. So if you're curious about the more detailed parts, go check out that video. But again, you do need to pull your trigger and pull your slide back about 1/8 of an inch, and then pull your takedown levers down on both sides simultaneously. And then your slide will pop right off. And you'll notice, a lot of people have noticed that the recoil spring and guide rod, they tend to kind of flop around in there a little bit. I have not noticed that that's been an issue for functionality, and I've seen other guns do that too. But some people have notated that. These guns do it as well. So again, a long-term study for that. But if you've done some work on your Glock 43 and you've got some different parts in there, internal parts, that sort of thing, they will translate over into the 48. I haven't found any issues with any of those parts. I've kind of played around with that 43X, and we'll be doing so with the 48 as well. So if you're curious about that, if you have a trigger or something, it will pop in here. So just in case you're curious. But otherwise, everything is as you would expect. So to throw it all back together, all we need to do is throw our slide on, and we are good to go. So there's a very basic disassembly of the 48. Again, go check out that 43X video. If you haven't, there's a better disassembly on that video. The shooting experience with the 48 was surprising. It took a while to get warmed up to it and the 43X, to be honest, and even warranted a day 2 range session. You're seeing a little bit of both in this video. Now, I don't like doing that, but frankly, the first day wasn't that great, and day 2 was only marginally better. Now, unlike the shooter, the gun was accurate, and the recoil impulse was a little better than the 43X, but only just. There was a little muzzle flip, but still being a small gun, it's bound to have some flip. I did notice the added weight of the extended 48 slide, but the advantage is slight. There is a noticeable improvement in accuracy in slow shooting thanks to the longer sight radius. Now, much like the 43X, and I encourage you to check out that video, I've got a little banner that's probably swinging in right now, the rear serrations ground a little bit into my thumb knuckle due to some grip changes I recently made. Yes, it was discouraging, but really not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. I'll be excited to get back out to the range and make some minor tweaks to remedy the grip issue and dial both the 43X and the 48 in. I also can't wait to do some comparison work with the 48, but you'll need to leave some suggestions down below for that. At the end of the day, the 48 was manageable and by and large a pleasant shooter. Alright, let's take a look at the trigger of the 48 for just a moment or two. And much like the 43X, it's coming in around 6 pounds or so, but we do have our safety lever right here, and it does have the serrations around it. Some people like that, some people do not. I'm not a big fan, but again, this will serve. And we've got a little bit of take up right here to our wall, and you can feel the spring, but it otherwise is very smooth. And then our brake, just like that, again, about 6 pounds. And then our reset is right there. Now that's one thing about Glocks I really appreciate. The reset is relatively short and it's audible and it's tactile, and then we get back out to the start, and I'll do that again, of course. So we've got our take up to the wall, and there's your brake, again around 6 pounds, and then our reset right there and back out to the start. And you know, it's a Glock trigger. Glock triggers I've never thought were the best out of the box, but they definitely do run. Now I'll be doing some work on this very soon with tactical pontoon and maybe exploring some other options as well, but there's your trigger. So guys, what do I think of the Glock 48 overall? Well, I have to say, my initial prediction for this gun was completely wrong. Listen, I've been wrong before, I'll be wrong again, and I have no problem sharing that with you guys. I really thought everybody was going to be after the 43X. I was, for sure. I wanted to know if I would get along with that better than the original 43. But I, like others, have come to really appreciate the 48. It's kind of an unusual and different gun, especially with that longer slide. And I have found it to be an accurate gun. The recoil impulse is certainly manageable. It is a pleasant little shooter, and it is still ultra carryable. So I've been very impressed with that, and I've had a lot of feedback about the 48 as well. And speaking of that, guys, be sure to sound off. Let me know down below if you're interested in the 48 or if you've gotten one and what your experiences are. How's it running? Is it accurate? Are you carrying it now? I want to know all of that stuff. Let's definitely carry on a conversation about this. I always look forward to that, and thank you in advance for doing so. Otherwise, guys, thanks so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.